And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Welcome to the aviation section for today, July 26th, 2023. You have a couple options to further refine your weather search out on the telephone system and the World Wide Web. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at the email listed. So yesterday's lightning, around 10,000 strikes across Alaska and into Canada. Day before was roughly 20,000, so down quite a bit, but still a wide range of lightning activity, basically through the Yukon Territory up through the interior and out into the Brooks Range. So pretty impressive. And again, that was yesterday's lightning for July 25th. Taking a look at the satellite image, you can see the low out there in the Bering Sea, another weak low just south of the Aleutians, and a weak ridging over there in Shimmy and Atka, seeing some clearing skies out there, probably some marine layer, also some clearing through much of the interior and the mainland, and another weak low out there near the Panhandle. So flying weather on Thursday morning, pretty good flying conditions across the mainland. Only IFR conditions are poking into the Talkeetnas and Prince William Sound area and down into the Northern Gulf and out through the south side of Alaska Peninsula into the Bering Sea and up along the Arctic coast. There are some IFR conditions there, but otherwise basically going to be looking at some thunder showers, especially Thursday afternoon and continuing overnight. So thunder showers will be the main area of concern for aviation, especially through much of the interior, out through the Brooks Range and Alaska Range. And we'll see that up and coming here in a couple of slides. But again, IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, down through the Bering Sea and south side Alaska Peninsula into the southern end of the Cook Inlet. Otherwise, marginal conditions out along the Gulf Coast there and into the Alaska Range. So flying weather on Friday morning, again, pretty good flying weather through the interior and much of the mainland. Brooks Range looking nice, except we're going to have some thunderstorms again to watch out for. Otherwise, some IFR conditions along the Arctic coast, down through the Bering Sea and near the Alaska Peninsula and into, what would that be, the western side of the Gulf. Otherwise, marginal conditions in the rest of the Gulf region there and up into the Alaska Range and Kenai Peninsula and down to the southwest. For Friday afternoon, again, convection is going to be lighting up in the afternoon hours, but otherwise marginal conditions with a low moving through that region of the state, coming into the southwest, bringing some marginal conditions over portions of that area. Otherwise, decent flying weather across the rest of the mainland there with VFR conditions. Otherwise, RFR conditions down through the Bering Sea along the Arctic coast and portions of the Gulf. So what the thunderstorm outlook from the Aviation Weather Unit looks at isolated thunderstorms through much of the mainland and in the interior, but otherwise scattered thunder showers up there across the uplands into the Yukon Basin and along the Brooks Range. And overall general outlook for thunderstorms on Thursday, looking again for thunderstorm activity through much of the eastern mainland down into the northern Panhandle. And then actually for Friday, a little less activity there on Friday, but still eastern interior and basically the eastern portion of the mainland. For past conditions, Anaktuvik, VFR conditions, but again, afternoon thunderstorms likely there. And same for Adigan. And then for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal conditions pretty much all day long. We don't expect as much thunder shower activity along the southern Alaska Range, so they get no thunder shower activity expected. And then same for Rainy Pass, marginal conditions there. And then windy as we get into the northern portions of that Alaska Range, VFR conditions with thunderstorm activity, especially in the afternoon. Isabel, same kind of scenario there. Antasta, again, VFR conditions with afternoon thunderstorms. And then Tanita went for IFR conditions early, improving to marginal with, again, some isolated thunderstorm activity along the mountainous areas. And then Portage, no thunderstorm expected there. You might see a few pop-ups in the northern portion of the mountains there. But otherwise, IFR improving to marginal. Chilkoot, IFR improving to VFR conditions down there with thunderstorm activity again in the northern Gulf, northern Panhandle. And then freezing levels up to 12,000 feet through the south central area, otherwise 10,000 feet out there across the western coast and into the Bering Sea, 8,000 foot freezing level, again with a low out there in the eastern Russian territory, and another 10,000 foot freezing level out there in the Panhandle. Then for ice conditions, above 12,000 feet is what I looked at today, with isolated moderate possible in some of those areas along the western mainland, again was associated with a low coming in to the Bering Sea and southwest Bristol Bay region. Otherwise, actually no icing expected across much of the state of Alaska. Jet stream up around 30,000 feet, jet streak cutting across the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula with up to 100 knots in clockwise flow around a ridge of high pressure. Otherwise, southerly flow coming into the west coast there up to 35 knots along much of that region. And then northerly flow as you get down over into the central Aleutians, and light and variable across much of the rest of the mainland into the Panhandle. For 9,000 foot winds on Thursday, kind of clockwise flow around that low out there in the Bering, bringing southerly winds into the west coast up to 40 knots there along much of the west coast, and higher values of winds out there just south of Alaska Peninsula up to 55 knots. Otherwise, the rest of the mainland, light and variable. For 3,000 foot winds, you can see that low there at the 3,000 foot level out there in the Bering. Southerly winds across the western mainland, light and variable across much of the mainland and down into the southeast, with another weak low out there just south of the western Aleutians. So for turbulence on Thursday, went to surface to 3,000 feet in isolated areas across the west coast there, again with that low moving in onshore there. Another area out there in the eastern Aleutians and the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula.